Hello, my good friends, doctors. I'm here to present to you exactly this clinical case for you. I'm decided to make a video because on Instagram, when you post a case like this one, I have just the chance to post 10 pictures, and impossible for me to have a full protocol with just 10 pictures. And of course, the video I can explain for you the behind the scenes decisions that we take during this treatment for this patient here. So I really hope that you enjoy this shape and this format, and let's do that. Let's discuss about what matter, that is this clinical case. And you see this high smile line here, and we have some problems. Of course, this was implant. This patient received this implant not longer than 1 year ago, after a huge bone reconstruction. A very nice friend of mine, but still, though, we still with a very good handling of the bone situation. Of course, the soft tissue deficiency here, it's evident. You see the difference from one side and another one. Not just talking about the retraction from premolar canine, a little bit on the distal margin of the central incisor, but mainly on the black space, on the papilla side, on the contour of this implant on the lateral incisor. And you see even the black space here, so on this area, the shadow area. And we're going to try to really rebuild this for the patient. Okay, I'm going to explain for you the strategy, the reasoning about the decision take. We're going to propose for the patient 2 surgeries, just only with a soft tissue graft in 2 different stages, to try really to reach all the level of the soft tissue contour that we need to have a aesthetic treatment for this patient. Okay, so first thing, we're going to remove this crown away. Okay, why is that? If you think that we need to rebuild the papilla and you still have the crown present and is a very narrow papilla, it's technically impossible for me not just to perform the surgery, but to allow for this graft to be nourished properly. Okay, because it's a squeezed environment, no good nourishment at all. The survival of the connective tissue is going to really struggle, and you're not going to collect any good results. So I need to remove this crown. I need to let this tissue to be back again, and after the soft tissue had healed completely on the top of the crest, I'm going to apply my connective tissue graft. Okay, and I'm going to show you the options about which technique we can apply for a case like this one. Okay, taking a look on the x-ray for this patient before starting, the bone peaks are good. We lost a little bit of bone, but it's not a long way apically. I maybe had lost 2-3 millimeters. Is a challenge, but that we can manage. Okay, the palatal buccal position of the implant is great. The implant is also integrated. The apical coronal position of this implant platform is also very good. So everything that we're going to do is remove the crown and sleep this implant for some times until we had rebuilding all the soft tissue that is required for the new contour. And after this stage done, we're going to reopen and use this same implant. Okay, the occlusal view here, you see that there is no lack of volume. The buccal contour here is good. The problem is more vertical than horizontal. Okay, so we just remove the crown. I like to remove the epithelium inside the socket entrance from the emergence profile of this implant, because if you let it heal naturally, the epithelium is going to take some time to vanish, and sometimes the epithelium is still projected from inside the area. And when you are managing the flap at the time of the grafting, you're still going to have some epithelium lost inside the flap, so I do not like it. So when I remove the crown, I take a high-speed burn, so a blade, and remove the epithelium, let it bleed, and use a collagen sponge to hold this bleeding here. And I think the tissue that is going to be back there, it's more connective tissue on the middle and epithelium just on the surface. Okay, so every time that I can, I remove this way here. Let's back to the presentation. I took you can see here the CBCT scan, but this is an old CBCT scan. I just asked for the dentist that is my friend that had done the bone blocks here and the implant for this CBCT scan. And why I had this information, I need this information, because on this CBCT scan I can check a little bit the thickness of the connective tissue available on the palate. Okay, when I'm going to choose the technique to harvest my connective tissue, this information is priceless. Okay, so I can see here for this case, here is the area of the implant. Okay, good. If I decide to do a pedicule, I need to have a good volume from these lateral incisors and going back on the palate on the canine area, and on the premolar area I need to have a good thickness here, and I have a good thickness. The tongue is still touching the palate, and that is something that you always need to remember when ask for a CBCT scan for your patient. Do not touch the tongue on the palate, okay? And if you not touch the tongue on the palate, you can check really the contour here and check exactly the thickness. But I can figure out because the tongue not touch completely the roof of the mouth, and I can check that I have 4 millimeters, maybe 6 at the apical margin available for me to make a good pediculum. Good. So after 3 weeks, I had the soft tissue recovered for the removal of the crown, and I can start my soft tissue grafting here. We can apply tabletop option, we can apply pediculum here, but I'm going to tell you something, okay? My first option is the pediculum. Why is that? Better nourishment. In a case like this one, my challenge here is to build up tissue on this area, the papillas, and a connective tissue really struggle to be maintained on this papilla, mainly because of the nourishment. And if I use a pediculum, the connective tissue on this pediculum usually is more stable, okay? During the healing, it's maintained the volume that you grafted. And one more thing, the pediculum as my first option also is possible for a case like this one. Why is that? Because pediculum, when you move that from the palate, you're going to have some width of the pediculum, right? Usually you cannot take a pediculum large enough to treat like a 2 crowns defect. So a pediculum is not large for that, but for 1 crown, 1 tooth, the pediculum is perfect. So every time when I can, I'm going to use the pediculum. For that, the defect must to fit for this challenge, and the thickness of the palate also must to be enough for me to really have this option here. We're going to advance currently the flap here, and of course here. So on this area, on the premolar, we have a release incision like a trapezium, and on the middle we have like a triangular shape to advance this flap over this recipient area and to cover this recession here. Okay, no release in need, of course, on the central incisor, because when I advance the flap here, of course, this contour is going to be solving the defect and rearrange the soft tissue contour perfectly on the distal margin of these central incisors, right? So we start with an incision in the middle of the crest. You can do full thickness flap for a pediclum, but it's better for you to do a partial thickness flap, letting the periosteum on the ground, because the periosteum is going to nourish much better the connective tissue. Does not matter if it's a pediclum, a tuberosity, subepithelium. Periosteum always good on the ground to make the nourishment, okay? So from this incision on the top of the crest that you are seeing here, this whole area until the mucogingival line is going to be partial splitted, okay? So partial thickness is splitted. But this split, this run of the blade inside the tissue is going to be happen close to the periosteum, okay? You're going to let the periosteum on the ground, and now the thickness that is possible on the flap. That is very important. There is some anatomic information on that. The blood flows on the connective tissue, not run on the surface, run in the middle of this area. If you split the keratinized tissue in the middle, the flap is going to vanish. It's going to have a necrosis on the flap, so we're really going to be low on the ground, okay? But when we reach the mucogingival line, the history is completely the opposite. We're going to bring the incision now close to the mucosa, over the muscles, under the mucosa. There is a lot of benefit on that. I cannot cover all this benefit today, but it is the basic preparation for the flap that is going to nourish, protect the pediclum. And here's the pediclum. We are open a window large enough to access a pediclum at least with the same width of the defect. It means that this distance here is going to be the same distance of the pediclum. If possible, you can bring the pediclum a little larger to really fill all these spaces, okay? So partial splitting, blade always contoured parallel to the surface that you are preparing. This is a very nice picture. Nobody noticed here. Why is that? There is a reason, okay? How deep you are burying, you are hiding, you are working with your blade inside the palate, okay? Of course, I told you about the width of the pediclum. I told you that you need to prepare an area to reach the pediclum here. But how apical you need to prepare this area? So when you calculate the width necessary and some extra width to open a window, you're going to know exactly how deep you need to work with your blade, okay? And look with the previous slide here. I'm just checking how deep I'm going to bury the neck of my blade inside the tissue to achieve and to maintain to that level. If you not pay attention and you're going to go deeper with your blade neck, you can compromise your surgery just cutting the main palatal blood flow. So this is a small tip for me to always work with, bring the blade inside and outside the tissue to see how deep I'm doing the preparation. So after raising this window, I'm going to have the access for the pediclum to trim it properly, and we're going to design the pediclum until close to the site, okay? And there is a very nice detail here, okay? Why is that? Look at this work of the blade, okay? I brought the design of the pediclum until to the distal margin of my defect, but here I'm using the blade to preserve a small amount of connective tissue on the top of the crest, okay? So on the buccal face of this connective tissue was the flap preparation. On the palatal surface of this tissue here is the pediculum preparation. But this 2 millimeters wide and maybe 3-4 millimeters height of connective tissue is going to be left there. It's going to stay there. When I rotate my pediculum is going to be on the top of this layer here. If I remove this layer, the pediculum is going to be more apical, and I really need to bring all the thickness necessary to rebuild a great amount of tissue for this defect. Okay, so this is another tip. And from that point, from the palatal side of that incision that you saw, we're going to detach the pediculum full thickness flap with the periosteum together with the connective tissue. All the thickness that I can bring under the window that I had prepared, right? So here is the full thickness flap. We detach and let the pediculum to be loose. After that, I can really bring the pediculum in place, okay? Always trying to keep the periosteum facing down. It means that you must to turn the pediculum, not it flip over the pediculum, okay? I'm going to try to maintain the periosteum against the ground, especially in cases that I'm doing some bone grafting together with this surgery. Is not this case here, but it's nice when using a pediculum to let the periosteum against the biomaterial of the bone graft. Okay, this is regular stuff, okay? We're going to need to make the deepitalization of this papilla here, of course, for the flap to advance over. Don't be shy in doing that, okay? Do not try to be soft, because this part of the papilla, the thickness of the epithelium is huge. You have a lot of keratin on top of that. If you are trying to preserve something here, probably going to let some of the epithelium still there, maybe some keratinization, and with epithelium, when you bring the flap over, the nourishment is not good, and on the post-op for your patient, you're going to see on the healing small papilla being loose, that not fitting in place, not integrated in place, okay? So pay attention on this detail, and for me the best way to do and fastest way, the cheapest way, is to do with the 12th blade. Just engage the tip of the blade, scrape against the distal margin of the crown and bring it forward immediately, and you're going to slice away exactly the thickness of the tissue that you want to do. Engage under the papilla and just take it away, okay? Micro scissors work nicely, but for me take a little longer. Sometimes I smash the tissue. A good micro scissors to do that is quite expensive, and high-speed burn also is good, fine grammature, but fastest way, cleanest way is the 12 blade, in my opinion. Of course, everybody has a different trick and get used to a different technique, so it's just telling to you what is my perception here, right? So the epithelialization of the papilla, and here we brought the pediculum in place. Okay, stop everything you are doing, pay attention on this tip here. After that you can go home, okay? You are home now, I know. What is the shape of the tissue when we graft this area? Usually we think in like a square shape connective tissue graft, or a square shape ending of the pediculum, right? Exactly. So you're going to bring the pediculum here, in touch of the papilla, to try to have the papilla back. But there is some area here that you need to think about and to be concerned about. Why is that? This area here, just under the papilla, when you are conturning the crown, if you had this area here empty, let a void there. When the tissue and the flap start to heal, with this absence of mechanical support here, usually the papilla just recede a little bit. So we need, when designing a graft, to let the graft more or less with this C shape here. We need to feel this border on the buccal contour here with the connective tissue on, okay? So you already saw that there is a difference in the shape of my pedicellum with the shape that I need on the recipient area. And there is a trick that we're going to do here, that is splitting the pedicellum in half medially, half distally, like a bifid tongue here from a viper. You're going to let this area with anchorage with the suture here, and this area with anchorage with the suture distally. Ricardo, we're going to lack some of the connective tissue in the center. Remember when we saw the initial case on the occlusal view? So that margin, that area, there's no lack of volume, okay? I do not need to overgraft this area. That is the first point. Second point, the center, usually it's an area that we're never going to struggle to graft and to achieve the volume that you want. This area here in the center, if you have a defect here, there, no problem. Many different techniques can solve this problem. Roll flap during the reopening, any tunneling CT graft, the volume here, cervical margin, is not something that is difficult to perform, okay? But the papilla sites, this area here, really are our goal. That is important. That's why we managed to have this pedicellum to really fit in the base of this whole area here. So this is my lateral anchorage from the surface under the flap, and from the flap engaging the pedicellum, bring it medially. Pay attention not to tie the knot too tight, and maybe bring out the pedicellum medially. So take a look. Sometimes we use the plier on the opposite side to manage exactly if you are centering the pedicellum with this defect, okay? And another sutures on the distal margin. Okay, here there's not good anchorage on this area. If I try to catch the periosteum of the papilla here, when I tie the knot, it's just going to break away, okay? So we start the sutures from the palate. We engage under the papilla, emerge here, engage the pedicellum, and return again on the palate. So the papilla itself, from the buccal side to the palatal side, is being used as the anchorage to drag this border here, this bifid border of the pedicellum to the distal margin. After that is regular stuff. We just brought the flap over, protected everything, and occlusal view from my donor site, the pedicellum. 7 days later, the patient was using a removable as a temporary. And sorry, this is 5 days. When he saw the patient first day, there is a miss note here. And the removable was with a small pressure on the pontique area. We just released that. We saw the patient 10 days after the surgery. So you see a very nice and stable tissue. And after that, the last follow-up, 30 days, that we have documented for this patient here. You see now the same treatment plan from the beginning. The digital design here over this picture, and more or less we are achieving the symmetry for this patient. Maybe a second CT graft is going to be necessary if I have this area receding a little more. Let's decide that later, and probably this is a case that I'm going to update you when you are doing the sequence of this case, okay? And I just appreciated that you have the attention to reach the end of this small video. I hope to have the time to record and to explain some of my the clinical case and the decision taken. And all the best for you, my friend. Share, invite your friends to came to the page, to came and to follow to Instagram page, on Facebook page that we have a lot of full protocol case just available there. So I'm glad that you really endure this full video here. All the best. See you soon.